Budapest vetoed the EU's joint statement on support for Ukraine, effectively blocking the start of negotiations on joining the European Union. Due to the position of Hungary and Slovakia, the EU was unable to approve the 18th package of sanctions against Russia. Well, in its own country, the Hungarian government has launched a real campaign of hatred towards Ukraine. What is behind all this? And what is Viktor Orban really so afraid of? Let's figure it out. On the eve of the EU summit in Brussels, the government of Viktor Orban announced the results of the so-called national referendum on supporting Ukraine's accession to the European Union. According to their calculations, 2,280,000 people allegedly voted, and 95% of Hungarian citizens do not support Kyiv's European integration. The Ukrainian Foreign Ministry called this action manipulation and anti-Ukrainian hysteria. By the way, in the official letters that Hungarian citizens received along with their ballots, they were directly urged to vote against Ukraine's accession to the EU, saying that it would harm their national interests.
The Hungarian government made every possible effort to secure the outcome it desired. The consultations were accompanied by aggressive incitement of groundless hatred toward everything related to Ukraine. Such an information campaign has been ongoing for many months. Hungarian officials have been inventing non-existent threats allegedly coming from Ukraine in order to unjustifiably intimidate Hungarian citizens. We are confident that the overwhelming majority of Hungarian citizens are capable of recognizing this primitive manipulation. From the statement of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine.
Earlier, the head of the Hungarian opposition party, TISA, Peter Maguiar, said that the so-called Orban referendum had failed. He said that in reality, 600,000 people took part in the vote. That is, almost 4 times less than the government announced. Maguiar emphasized that the authorities did not hold a single open meeting. They only sent out letters and conducted an aggressive and expensive advertising campaign. By the way, Viktor Orban himself, in violation of all the rules, posted a photo where he votes against Kyiv's European integration.
This is the lowest figure in the entire glorious history of national consultations. And this was managed to be achieved only after several months of total mobilization and burning of tens of billions of public money. A complete failure. Peter Maguiar, chairman of the Hungarian opposition party TISA, on Facebook.
Several months before the start of the referendum, Hungarians began to be shown videos that claimed that if Ukraine joined the EU, the mythical Ukrainian mafia would freely penetrate the country. At that moment, the video showed drug labs or heavily armed people who kidnapped passers-by. Pro-government channels reported on the allegedly dangerous Ukrainian agricultural products, the imminent bankruptcy of farms, and that every Hungarian family would give about half of their income to Kyiv. Here is what the German publication Deutsche Welle writes about this company.
This was not just another of Orban's many smear and hate campaigns. It was the first campaign directed against an entire country, which was declared a mafia state. It was also Orban's first campaign to collectively dehumanize citizens and denigrate them as dangerous, ruthless criminals who would supposedly destroy Hungary through organ, human, drug, and arms trafficking, through genetically modified food, and by robbing Hungarians of jobs, income, pensions, and health care. From a publication by Deutsche Welle.
Billboards with portraits of Volodymyr Zelensky and Ursula von der Leyen also appeared on the streets of Hungarian cities. The inscriptions read, "Brussels is playing with fire." The president of Ukraine said that Orban was making a historical mistake, not realizing that his policy would have much more serious and dangerous consequences for Hungarian-Ukrainian relations. Zelensky also commented on the use of his portrait.
Viktor's policy, unfortunately, is against Ukraine and against Europe. He uses it in his domestic policy. He wants to use the war in Ukraine for his own interests in the elections. It is unfair. I cannot smile and hug what is really happening, because reality should not differ from politics. If you are ready for an honest relationship, we will find a framework. But like this, using my face for your own elections? I did not give my consent to this. I am the president of another country, Volodymyr Zelensky, president of Ukraine, in an interview with the Valash online portal.
At the EU summit, 26 EU member states, that is, all but Hungary, declared their support for further accession negotiations with Ukraine and agreed to take into account the European Commission's assessment that Ukraine was ready to open the basics cluster. But Viktor Orban, as usual, was against it. He explained his decision by the results of the so-called referendum, and he said that his country was not yet ready to unblock the process of Ukraine's European integration.
The problem is the war. If we would integrate Ukraine into the European Union, we would integrate the war. And we would not like to be together in one community with a country who is in war and represent an imminent danger on us. Because if a member of the European Union is in war, it means that European Union is war, and we don't like it.
In addition, Hungary and Slovakia blocked the 18th package of sanctions against Russia, having put forward a number of their demands for this document. As a result, the EU leaders agreed to extend the sanctions against the aggressor country for another 6 months. But the 18th package was supposed to be a strong blow to Putin's military machine, since its main focus is the energy revenues of the Russian Federation. For many EU officials, Orban's position was not a surprise. The European Union has been talking for several years about the need to find ways to overcome Budapest's veto, but the necessary mechanism has not been approved.
We are also accompanying Ukraine on its EU path. Under relentless fire, Ukraine is passing reform after reform. It's impressive. And this is why the Commission defends the opening of the first cluster of negotiation. Ukraine has delivered. Now we must too, because the accession process is based on merit, and Ukraine merits moving forward.
Europe's security is interlinked with Ukraine's security. This is why we continue to push for a just and lasting peace, while paving the way for European Union membership. On this, our objective remains firm and unchanged.
For Orban, the issue of Ukraine's accession to the EU is also a domestic political one. Many in the country are tired of him and his government. Loud corruption scandals have been shaking Hungarian society for the past few years, and Orban faces a real threat of losing power next spring during the parliamentary elections. In addition, according to the latest sociological surveys, the Hungarian opposition party TISA not only overtook the ruling Fidesz, but also gained a significant advantage, about 15%. And now Orban is trying to shift voters' attention from the failures of socio-economic policy to an imaginary external enemy.